Hobby Lobby associate and asked, "Are you going to still be carrying patterns inside of your store?" And she seemed rather annoyed and irritated by my question and pointed to one small cabinet of patterns, which were simplicity, and said, "There they are." Her response was rather off putting, but I went on my merry way and remembered that in July of 25, I did a video about how the Big Four had been acquired by Hilco Capital. I hadn't done an update on that story since, so I thought that I'd do it today. Hello, my name is Cherie, and if you're new to my channel, welcome. I have an article here that comes from craftindustryalliance.org. Before I read it to you, I just wanted to make sure that you understand back in June or July of 25, the Design Group of America, which owned the big four pattern companies, went into bankruptcy and they sold the company to a liquidation firm called Hilco Capital. And that's where I left off the story. So it reads as follows. Management worked with private equity to spin off the sewing pattern division into a 200-year-old startup. After much uncertainty, it's confirmed the Big Four sewing patterns have survived the Design Group America's bankruptcy. The sewing pattern business, including the Simplicity, McCall's, Vogue, and Butterick brands, was sold as a going concern for 2.25 million to Rubelman Capital in partnership with existing management. We're going to pause right there and read a little bit more about who Rubelman Capital is. AI tells me that Rubelman Capital is a private equity firm based out of New York, and it also tells me they were founded in 2021. On the homepage of their website, it says, "Not just an investor, a sustainable partner. Rubelman Capital is an independent sector-focused middle market private equity firm. We seek to partner with exceptional management teams and provide them resources and expertise to drive growth across their business." Okay, now let's go ahead and go back to the article that I was reading before from Craft Industry Alliance. The new head of Simplicity Creative Group is Abby Small, who worked at the company for 35 years before her retirement as executive vice president and general manager in 2017. Okay, so this is not just any old big wig. This is somebody who's actually has intimate knowledge of the brand. Simplicity Creative Group will continue to operate in New York, keeping on about 78 employees, many of whom have worked for the company for decades. Okay, so if they worked for the company for decades already, won't they be ready to retire soon? And when they do, who is to say that they will still carry patterns? That's just what I'm thinking, but hey. She was referred to Rubelman Capital to secure funding. They love the business. They love the fact that it's got these amazing brands. They love the fact that it's got a loyal customer and a product that is unique, says Small. Rubelman Capital is helping the company rebuild its entire infrastructure as the pattern business sale did not include the back end process like accounting or email that are necessary for a business to function. It's an opportunity to build the company smarter, Small says. Whereas when the pattern business changed hands in the past, they never invested in it. They just plugged it into the next thing and hoped it was going to work as well as it did before. These guys are really looking at it from the start to finish of how we can make this easier and better for the consumer, she says. I'm not sure about what I think about her statement. It could be true, and if it is, that is a good thing. But if it is not, that is bad for us as the consumer, as there will be far less choices when it comes to what patterns that are printed out that we have access to. I'm going to read just a short bit more of this article, and then we're going to move on. The sale includes the historical and vintage library of materials related to Simplicity, Butterick, Vogue, and McCall's sewing patterns. More than 200 boxes of materials that have been moved to New York. It also includes inventory at the printing plant in Nenana. I always get that. I always have a hard time pronouncing that. I believe that's Wisconsin, WI, including its patterns pattern printing presses, and equipment for envelope stuffing. These are the last operating tissue paper pattern printing presses in the United States, also used by independent designers who contract with Simplicity for printing. Okay, so last time when we discussed this, I talked about how the Big Four owned the only tissue paper pattern printers in the whole country. And if these Big Four are to go out, then there will be no more paper patterns printed unless you go the route of printing a PDF pattern on just standard regular paper, which I kind of think that's what will end up occurring. But what do you all think? Okay, I have one other article that we should probably take a look at because it gives us a little bit of insight into what's going on versus what the people are saying in this article. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. It comes from The Guardian. This article says the end of the paper trail. Australia's largest garment pattern supplier is closing, and sewers are worried but pragmatic. For many sewers, choosing paper patterns from one of Simplicity McCall's Big Four brands was an in store ritual, but others say digital patterns are the way of the future. So, what I'll have to say about this is that the Big Four brands are, of course, now owned by Rubelman Capital, and they distribute all of these patterns all around the world. So this is what's going on in Australia. So what do we think is going to happen here? Decades ago, in the hollow days before the internet, sewers would walk into a haberdashery store, pick up a paper pattern labeled Vogue, Simplicity, or McCall's, and figure out how much material they needed, and head over to the fabric department to choose something they liked. It was careful, in-store ritual for sewers contemplating their next project, especially for those who were beginning their sewing journey. That was my process when I started sewing, which was a while ago now, says Michelle of Melbourne. It used to be a big investment that you would choose carefully based on what you could afford. But in Australia, these paper patterns from the legacy brands are on the way out. In early February, Simplicity and McCall Patterns Service Australia, the company behind the Big Four sewing pattern brands, announced it would be winding up operations and closing its Sydney warehouse as part of a global restructure. The company, which was under the name Simplicity McCall's, encompassed brands Simplicity, McCall's, Vogue, and Butterick, the Big Four, as well as New Look, Know Me, and Berta. They were the major suppliers of paper patterns to craft retailers and reportedly supplied 99% of Spotlight's patterns. Paper patterns are a heritage business. Let me skip over this paragraph. We don't need to know that. They weren't moving with the times, says Ann Gross, the founder of online store Designer Stitch, who has 3 decades of experience as a designer and teacher. They were only offering hard copy patterns, and they were falling behind on season drops. Gross says independent designers, by contrast, have been offering PDF patterns for over 20 years. The commercial industry has been badly affected by all the independent people coming up. Okay, so when you have the ability to make paper patterns, that makes more competition for the commercial printers. And back in the early days, styles didn't change that frequently. Maybe every decade you get a change in fashion, but now since there's fast fashion, fashions are changing faster than they can be printed. So by the time one pattern is designed and printed, that is already old. So I can understand why it would be difficult for a large pattern company to keep up with the fashion. So for years and years, these Big Four companies have been just reprinting the same patterns over and over again rather than making new ones that are more in step with the current times that we live in. And I think I'm going to stop this article right here. But what I wanted you to get from this is that a lot of those patterns are no longer accessible to people in Australia. So, what do we think is going to happen in the United States? Uh, I'm looking at what went on with Hobby Lobby as far as them no longer carrying many of the brands and only now having a cabinet full of Simplicity patterns. It only seems to me that the paper patterns are going the way of the past. But what do you all think? Do you think that we're going to continue to see paper patterns, or that all patterns from now on are eventually going to be just PDF patterns that you have to go to some website and have printed out on standard paper? Please let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.